Just kind of gonna have a chill day, do some reaction, get some content out. It's been a little while. Gonna have a chill day, do some reaction, get some content out. It's been a little while. Oh, I'm going through twice. Why is that? Why is that? Oh, I'm hearing myself. Sorry, everybody. Still getting used to this whole, Oh, I'm hearing myself. Sorry, everybody. Oh, because I have my stream shut up. I'm so damn good at this. Alright. So we'll start with the Jesse Gender video. The should you play the wizard game discourse. I think that, you'll kind of see as we watch the video. But I think that I have some unique things to say about it. We'll start there.
Well, we're waiting.
Hey everybody, so I'm at an airport and the lighting is poor. We'll talk about that later, but more importantly...
And just to preface, Jessie Gender is like one of my favorites. This is not about her. This is not personal in any way. She's the queen of nuance, of course, and always will be. But I guess I'm just kind of surprised here at the kind of lack of nuance when it comes to this particular situation, to be completely frank.
I wanted to talk about the fact that I'm a fan of leftist streamer Hassan. I don't think he's perfect, I don't always agree with him, but I like him quite a lot, and I think he does a lot of really good work, and I think he's a good egg. I think he's a real good egg overall. But recently, because this is online, he got into a bit of drama, as happens sadly a lot with content creators, and shout out to FD Signifier's great recent video on this topic, by the way. But this drama was about how he, Hassan, wanted to play on his stream a certain wizarding game, controversial for reasons that I spoke about in a recent video, in order to raise money for transgender charities. To try to use a game that is part of a wizarding franchise that is owned by an anti-trans bigot doing active harm to trans people, to fight back by doing a charity stream to try to make money for trans people, those she is directly harming. Honestly and truly, I think that is a fantastic impulse. It's a kind one, it's a caring one, it's one that shows he has a desire to do good, to help, to be kind, and to try to make change, that is his first desire. And I think that speaks all very well of him and who he is and what he tries to do with his work and his platform. Yeah, and I'm sure if he did do that charity stream, that it would make a lot of money for transgender charities, which is awesome. However, there is an issue. He is a leader for many in many communities, not just the leftist community, but the streamer community and many others, including a leader for many trans people. And I see a lot of folks, including other streamers or even transgender streamers, say, oh, well, if he can play the game, then I can. And then I see other people who look up to those streamers and leaders and say, oh, if they can play it, then I can donate to trans charities and play it myself. But here's the thing.
I mean, that's just kind of how socialization works. But at the same time, we're not responsible for other people's actions either. I apologize if I have long pauses. I'm still trying to get used to the live thing. It's kind of a chill day.
Now that everyone here has bought and played the transphobes game and gave it more money and attention and validity, that's what you've used your platforms to do.
I mean, to be clear, she's right about the idea behind it. You know, if what she's saying could work, that'd be great.
To give validity to this game, to say it is okay, it makes her relevant, it makes her platform and franchise relevant, and allows her to keep justifying and causing harm to the transgender community. And also keeps telling the people in charge of this franchise that yes, they can still keep making stuff within it and make money while she's still doing her horrible stuff.
The estimated hold time is now 96 minutes.
And I'm not just talking about generally in our culture today, but I'm saying that this is happening within our own spaces that are supposed to be directly transgender supportive. Yes, the world sucks. Yes, it's breaking streaming records, and that sucks. But it doesn't mean that we have to replicate that economy within our own spaces that are supposed to be safe for trans people. It supports her economy, not...
The equivocation between, like, playing the game and being an ally, playing the game and supporting trans people, like, they are not mutually exclusive. And I don't think, I mean, I haven't heard a good case for that they would be.
Ours, not the marginalized, not transgender people's, and it normalizes in everyday discussions and discourses, keeping her and her platform in our attention, in our mind, in our culture, and we need to not do that. We don't use the tools of the oppressor to take down the oppressor. I'm not saying we're going to be able to take down the oppressor today, but playing that game is...
So that's the thing. She's correct. You don't use the tools of the oppressor to bring down the oppressor. Absolutely. But then we call for the boycott. And what is that?
Playing on her and transphobic terms. This is what I and others talk about when we say don't play the wizarding game. It's not that you are a bad person or a bigot if you do. But what it's doing is not actually supporting trans people. And it's not being an active ally or accomplice to the transgender community. Even if you do use it to try to do good things. We fight on our terms, not theirs. And a lot of people said this to Hassan, and good on him, he decided not to do the stream, which I think is a correct thing, but a few things have happened in the discourse after that fact. First, people have said Hassan was bullied into not playing the game by transgender people. I'm sure many people were assholes to Hassan during this. Some of them...
I can't blame him, and it's a real shame. I don't know. We don't need to dogpile people. We can make our intentions clear without that.
Quite possibly being trans, and wanted to react vitriolically at him for his initial impulse to play the transphobic game to help trans people. And that really sucks, because his intention was good. Don't harass streamers for playing the game. His intent was a good one, his hope was an earnest one, his desire was a good one. We don't use the tools of the oppressor to fight oppression. Oppressors harass. Oppressors view things in binary and essentialist terms and want to create antagonism. And they want us to do the exact same thing to each other. While we fight oppressors, while not harassing them, we don't do that to each other. We create dialogues. We work with our community and between communities in kindness, and don't essentialize one's actions, but create meaningful conversations with each other based on the understanding that we are imperfect people imperfectly fighting a horrid system that hurts us all. Also, by framing the discussion as if trans people bullied him by saying that that was the overriding thing, which may even be completely true, it's ignoring the valid critiques that were being made, like the ones that I hopefully articulated earlier. And it frames the discussion in terms of building a resentment against the marginalized, against trans people. It frames trans people as the aggressors in this entire situation, as if we're the hateful, hurtful ones, when in actuality, we're the ones being harmed in all of this.
It's not being hateful and hurtful. It's the weaponization of the issues and the trauma to bully someone. That's the problem.
In fact, it's also very important to point out that one of the biggest right-wing disinformation campaigns about transgender people is that we're all bullies trying to control what you say or do.
And they canceled her because she said in an interview, and this is not exactly what she said, but effectually, she said gender was a fact. And then the trans community got mad as they started calling her a TERF. I didn't even know what that was. But I know that trans people make up words to win arguments.
The way that you can tell who holds all the power in a society is by who you can't make fun of, right?
That's right. So his speech is violence, their violence is speech. See how that works? What's interesting is that the number of people who really care about this issue enough to assault someone over it is tiny. And yet they have disproportionate power. 350 million people in the country, maybe 1,100 feel that way, but they're running everything. Why is that?
Most trans people are just saying this casually and trying to be reasonable, like I hopefully am trying to be myself. And yet the narrative always focuses on the loudest, most vitriolic voices.
It's a reasonable request for people to not support J.K. Rowling and to not buy the game. This is a completely reasonable request. This isn't where I take issue with the discourse. You get to request whatever you want, and a lot of this goes back to my first video. You can ask for whatever you want, and it should be considered. But that's where, like, the line between that and bullying is a fine one. A very fine one.
In order to create a narrative around trans people. Now, I'm not saying that this is what Hassan is intentionally doing, but constantly framing trans people as bullies who are coming to attack you ultimately supports framing trans people as harassers and bullies, which ultimately feeds into the right-wing narrative around transgender people that frames us as the aggressors when really we are the ones being victimized. And by the way, I'm not saying that Hassan is contributing to this narrative intentionally, but certain people are taking it that way. Just like right-wing folks are currently using the fact that one streamer started crying after some mild pushback from her community about her playing Hogwarts Legacy, using it as the transes are bullying you. Also, these discourses make it about individuals, the person who's being bullied by the transes, instead of about the actual trans community, the entire group of people that is being harmed. It also forgets that trans people are harassed like this on the daily, just for being trans online.
I'm not saying all trans people are acting perfectly in all this. Some trans people may be angry and vitriolic towards Hassan and others, and that sucks. It is awful, and we shouldn't be doing, no one should be doing it. But a lot of trans people are hurting right now. We're imperfect people fighting a horrid system imperfectly. That's not to forgive them, it's not to say it's okay, but it's the understanding that we have to have when you have a marginalized group being attacked.
And I know the criticism to this video will be, well, if he plays Hogwarts Legacy, then maybe people who might be watching an anti-trans streamer might watch him instead. But my argument back to that would be, instead of worrying about continual endless growth in a very capitalistic sort of mindset, why not worry about modeling how to fight for trans people and platform trans people to your audience? Be a champion to the audience you already have. And hey, who knows, maybe by taking a stand, doing something different than the already tons of other people playing Hogwarts Legacy on the platform, you'll make your audience grow anyways, by being someone different, by showing them a different way forward that's positive and helpful.
But second, I also hear now that Hassan is not going to do anything. He's not going to do a trans charity stream. At least that's what I know at the time of this filming. Maybe that's changed. He's not going to play any game or talk about transgender issues during this time. But we don't, as activists, do things because people were dicks or because things are awful all the time. We don't be reactive. We be proactive. And being proactive means realizing you don't need the wizard game to do a transgender charity stream. You can just do a transgender charity stream. The wonderful video essayist Jacob Geller did one actually late last year playing sword video games and raised thousands of dollars. Hell, the most effective trans charity stream that I'm personally aware of was of Donkey Kong 64, a game that is decades old at this point. You can just do a transgender charity stream. You don't need to play any specific game. In fact, even better, you can support not only a transgender charity stream, but a transgender artist at the same time. You can use their platform to play a game by a transgender person that others may not even have heard of.
It's a great idea for us to choose alternatives. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just am not such a fan of policing others to this degree in order to make them into allies.
For example, Celeste comes to mind. Tell Me Why also is a game that has transgender artists and actors within it. Bloodborne PSX, the indie free Bloodborne PS1 demake, is even better too. Give attention to the indie creator of Bloodborne PSX, who is a transgender woman who made that game out of a passion and desire to learn to be a better creator, and who wants to go on to do more cool projects beyond just Bloodborne demakes. And I'd honestly, by the way, recommend No Clip Gaming's wonderful documentary about her, by the way. Imagine if Hassan, one of the biggest streamers out there right now, streamed her game while doing a trans charity stream, gave her attention, and inspired other streamers to do the same. Would it be better numbers than the Wizard game numbers? Maybe, maybe not, probably not. But it would be doing things on our terms. Imagine Hassan streaming that game. It might help change the course of her career completely in a positive way. It would enable her and help a transgender creator be able to make more wonderful, beautiful things and put those beautiful things out in the world for other trans people to resonate with and other people who aren't trans to find and discover and see what trans people can do. And I want to see those things that she can make, what she has to say. And all of that would be done while doing a charity stream for trans people. But maybe some of you out there are like, look, those games are awesome, but they're too small. The Wizard game is trending right now and relevant, which will eat that up. We need to play a trending game. And okay, if that's your argument, I got you there too. Play Last of Us Part 2. That's a video game that is relevant right now because...
What about people who are not able to play certain games either? Like I think we're leaning into ableism here a little bit, which really I would kill to speak with Jesse as a fellow autist. You know, it's, you know, I can't play horror games. I'll say that. They scare the shit out of me. I mean, I know there's obviously other games.
Because of the, I think, record-breaking HBO TV show. It's a video game that stars numerous queer actors and characters, including...
It is excellent, the TV show. If you haven't watched it, you absolutely need to.
Including a transgender one played by Star Trek's own Ian Alexander, who is boss, by the way, especially in that game. And the game was also made with several trans developers behind the scenes, including at least one that I know of in a lead developer role. And there might be more. And that's not even to mention that the TV show that is relevant right now stars Bella Ramsey, who is non-binary, and Pedro Pascal, who is one of the most adorable human beings of all freaking time, and also a vocal ally to the trans community, who himself has a transgender family member. Play that game. It's just as trending and relevant as the, Wizarding one. Right now, as I said, I'm in an airport, and sorry for the terrible noise and weird cuts because the speakers have been coming on. But the reason I'm here is because I'm traveling to Los Angeles to visit the Star Trek Picard premiere that I was very kindly asked to attend by the creators behind the show.
That's
with my
awesome.
fellow queer creator and Trekkie, Sean Farrick,
excited
and
for
others.
her.
Shout out to Trek Culture, by the way, for being amazing. And as I said, I was invited here by the creators of Star Trek, who I know for a fact donated to transgender charities and didn't play the Wizard game. I saw online one of the producers of Star Trek Lower Decks, my favorite Star Trek show right now, tweeted out about it, because he fucking rocks. And it showcases to me that there are big franchises and creators working within them and creators big and small, both within.
I am going to say more, by the way. I just wanted to make sure I saw this whole video, make sure it was fresh in my mind before I attributed any arguments to Jessie. I wanted to be sure that these were actually her arguments.
Franchise within big multimedia corporations and without, run by people who want to care and fight with the vulnerable. Support those people. And if you want to say, oh, support the devs of the Wizarding game, I talked about that in my big video. You see, the trick of our capitalistic attention economy is making you think you have to use where the attention already is to get anything done. To beg for scraps from someone else's table because they have the eye of Sauron of the cultural discourse on them. But we don't have to play that game. We, as activists, we create our own attention. We can't take down the Wizarding franchise, at least not right now. We can't take down the person who created it. It's not going to happen today. But the basis on which we build the chance to actually do that down the line does start today with our actions, what we create right now. And to do that, we create and fight on our terms. We cook our own meal with our community and others. We don't beg for leftovers from those who harm us. This isn't about a boycott of the Wizarding game. I'm not here for a boycott. I said as much in my last video. That's the wrong way to think about this. What this actually is about is creating our own future. Creating our own systems outside of these attention economy things. Making our own attention. Creating something stronger to build upon that works for us. Making opportunities for those who didn't have it before. And don't give more to those who already have too much. This isn't a lesson we should take away just in this situation. It's what we should remember always. If this video was just about this Hassan moment, I wouldn't have made this video. This is a goal we need to work towards always. We build on our own terms. We build our own systems of support. Oh, and by the way, this same argument goes for the trans character in the Wizarding game. Her name is Sirona. Sir-Ona. I see the developers are going to the same school of naming that gave us the wonderful Kingsley Shacklebolt. The character is a tokenizing, oh, I have a fictional trans best friend nonsense meant to trick you and others into saying all of this is okay. That you can use their tools and make people think they're being allies by...
That's probably true. It's not something I would have thought of, but I also don't tend to attribute bad motives to people. Just in general.
Supporting an economy based on hate. I spent the last few days getting told Avada Kedavra by bigots in my DMs and comments online. People calling me mudblood. People dehumanizing me. People telling me to kill myself using Wizarding avatars. The Wizard franchise, while an oppressor doing active harm owns and controls it, sadly can't be reclaimed. It is a tool for them. It is their terms now, their language now. Let's not try to claim their tools to fight them. Let's make our own and share them with each other. Oh, and speaking of which, the download link to Bloodborne PSX is in the down below, and it ain't $70. That's money you could instead then use to donate using the charity links that I also put down below. And by doing that, you get a game, and you help trans people, all while not supporting the Wizarding game, or an economy of hate. Just saying. Anyways, I got a flight to catch.
So, she talked about not playing by not, using the tools of the oppressor. Well, the tools of the oppressor is capitalism. And I did not realize she didn't call for the boycott, but like the boycott, for example, that's using the tools of the oppressor, right? Like, boycotts are great if they're organized and can work, but this didn't do any good, this whole thing. It really just came down to individuals when the problem is the system. And when we shame people like this, we don't reach them, they shut down. And isn't the point to reach people? I would much, much rather teach people enough awareness that they don't want to play it. I don't think we need to police the actions of people to the point where we don't let them play a game. You know, I don't go to Chick-fil-A if I can help it. I prefer not to go. I don't go alone. But when my boyfriend wants to go to Chick-fil-A, we go to Chick-fil-A. You know, if I can't convince him otherwise, we go, and I get a sandwich. Of course I get a sandwich. They're delicious. Unfortunately, delicious. But I feel like it's pretty similar. You know, I can imagine that there are cases where this is I play very limited types of games. This is the kind of game that you can play, and you've been waiting, and you're a huge Harry Potter fan, and you understand that, I mean, we don't have to defend J.K. Rowling in order to like Harry Potter. Like, we can understand that she's a bigot, and we don't want anything to do with her, and you can still be sentimental for Harry Potter. I think that's okay. For me, the two are linked, but they're not going to be for everybody. This might be, if this is the only game that you're going to play all year, you've been saving up, you're working 3 jobs, you know, and this is the game. Play the game, buy the game, see if you can not buy it. See if you can not give her money. You know, but there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. We know this. And yet, we go after individuals like this during this discourse. If you are able to not play the game, good. Probably shouldn't. I'm not going to. But if you can't, if you've heard the concerns, there's nothing else that can be done. You know, it comes down. Oh, okay. So back up for a second. And you know, the whole idea of boycotts and boycotts voting with your dollar, right? Well, just as much as, you know, voting rights have eroded, like these are false promises that were given that we can affect the system and that our votes count and it's a right and all these things. And yet, our voting power diminishes and diminishes and diminishes, including the dollars that are being stolen from us by our bosses and the upper class. This is intentional. This is not a coincidence, in my opinion. You know, it's really an issue of boundaries. It's really, really an issue of boundaries for me. Make your concerns known. Be clear about why. But I think all we can do is give people information. That's it. We just have to talk to people. And I believe that's good enough. You know, if you have to know where you end and other people begin. And this ties into the Arcelor discourse as well. Where the other person begins is the other person's decisions, such as to play the wizard game, the other person's speech. No one is controlling your emotions. You have to deal with your own trauma. You know, it's all valid. You know, speech can hurt us, absolutely, 100%. People's actions can hurt us, like, of course. This is true. But we can't make people feel bad to make them do what we want them to do. That's how we alienate people. That's the manipulation that the right wing does that we don't need to do. I don't like it. Alright, that was the end of that.
Giorgio, look. The peanut butter box is here.
Ralph, that's the Chewy pharmacy box with our flea and tick meds. It's not peanut butter.
The peanut butter. Últimas no.
So I want to talk about masking. I'm hoping that I'm able to freely talk about this. Me. Okay. I'm hoping I'm able to freely talk about this. A lot of the mask I do wear is that I was always told all my life that I talk too much. And I no longer talk too much. I don't think I've ever had anyone in my life, except for maybe my current partner, who would just let me talk and I could not say anything wrong. Like, I've always known that the next thing I could say is the wrong thing. And this is all trauma that I've dealt with. This is all in the past. But the effects of being treated that way and the mask I've been forced to wear have really changed me a lot as a person. And I really thought Vosh talking about how he doesn't mask was incredibly illuminating. And I just kind of want to put the other side of the coin. You know, what happens when the mask is so heavy and just won't budge once you realize that you don't have to wear it anymore necessarily. You know, because what does it do? It protects us from abuse, right? So we will see how much we have to say here.
Noticias. Spectrum estrena Spectrum One, donde Spectrum Internet, Wi-Fi avanzado y móvil ilimitado se unen.
How long is this? I can't remember.
I was diagnosed with autism last summer, and as part of that, I found out two things. I found out one, that a lot of my friends think I'm really weird, and I didn't know that, but they filled out like evaluations. Yeah, and they just said that they thought.
I went through this my senior year. There was no evaluations. My friends just said, you know, we just can't handle you. You're too much. But yeah, I went through my whole school career knowing something was wrong, but never being able to put my finger on it. Just like this poor girl.
I'm weird, and that basically everyone thinks I'm weird. And I wouldn't mind it that much.
Wait, how do you get your friends to fill out evaluate? Wait, I'm sorry, in what context did this take place? Because it makes it sound like the diagnosis for autism came along with a bunch of forms, like, hey, give these to your friends to fill out. Some doctors ask for that. I have never heard that before. Adult autism diagnosis does that? Really? My parents had to fill out something? Really? Wait, that's insane! Seriously? How to pursue an autism diagnosis. There's no ASD diagnosis criteria. I don't know. So this might be like a doctor by doctor thing. I don't know. That sounds so weird to me. It's extremely common, the idea.
I can't even imagine having, like... I want to go in for diagnostics, but, like... Could I really get people in my life to, like, fill out evaluations? I don't know. I can't... And I wouldn't want to see them. I don't know. Ugh.
Idea is that you have to have an observer fill out a form. That is so infantilizing. What, like, like you have, like you think your behavior might warrant a diagnosis, so like let's get your friends and family together to like fill out the "Are you a weirdo?" form to like. That is so strange. I've never been formally diagnosed with autism. When I was like 7 to 8 years old or something, I was a weird little kid. And my parents brought me to the doctor, and the doctor was like, okay, so here's the deal. Your boy here, Ian.
I was too. Very weird child. You know, my earliest memory is when I must have been so young. I must have been 6, maybe younger. And I remember trying to play with the kids, and we were playing with like cars or some little like toy cars or something. And I remember thinking to be careful because I was going to do or say something wrong at some point to make the kids not want to play with me anymore. I knew it was coming. And then I did it, whatever it was. I was over the top. I accidentally flung a car, you know, something silly. And I could never figure out what it was going to be. I never had anything instinctual when it came to that at all.
Ian almost certainly is autistic, but your school district has an automatic enrollment.
It's funny too because my sister got help, but I wasn't able to, and I was in and out of therapy my whole life. Vosh is very lucky that he was born. Honestly, I believe this. I don't know how true it is, but people my age are all getting diagnosed. Were diagnosed with bipolar and are getting diagnosed with like ADHD and autism. You know, being almost 40, so I'm almost 10 years older than Bosch-ish. I didn't really know what autism was when I was a kid. I had one friend who was diagnosed with Asperger's, and my mom, I remember there was one autistic girl without the ability to speak. But, I mean, that was it. And they didn't understand. Like, they just tried to control her. Like, thinking back on it, the lights, the people, she was overstimulated and or understimulated all the time and could never voice that. How? I mean, oof. I can't even imagine not being able to vocalize my needs.
In special education, if you meet a diagnostic criteria for certain conditions, including autism. Meaning that if I diagnose him formally, then the school, which of course has his medical records, like, you know, as schools often do, he'll be enrolled in the retard class, the pit that we throw them in. That sounds like a joke, but at my elementary/middle school, there actually was like a pit, kind of. It was a staircase that went down.
This is the emergency sleeping bag. I keep them in my glove compartment for situations just like this.
From the hallway that led into the central cafeteria area, and it was like this disgusting bird shit ridden concrete with metal stair railing staircase that headed down into like a dark and very smelly like little like staging space with enough room for maybe one person, and then from there there's one door, which I assume once you enter it you just die. Yes, that was the Vosh pit. Anyway, my parents did not want that for me, so they held off on they denied the formal diagnosis, and we've just kind of operated on an informal basis from there. Which, by the way, I'm very thankful for, because while I was a weird little kid, and I'm still kind of weird today, I do not think that would have been very good for me. Special education, like education stuff for people with neurological abnormalities or neuroatypical stuff, is often like really, really, really bad. Because being kind of asocial is often lumped together in with like actual cognitive disabilities. Does that make sense? Like, You can be somebody who is perfectly smart, perfectly capable of deductive reasoning, perfectly capable of completing assignments, but you're like really bad with social stuff, and you would get.
It's 100% true. And like for me, if I wasn't challenged, I couldn't focus. I always wanted to learn more and be challenged more.
Get the same classroom with the same teacher and the same curriculum as somebody who is socially engaged, but like maybe actually cognitively disabled, you know, and therefore can't complete the same assignments. It's just not good. It's not good. But then I skipped a grade, so dabbing on them.
And I also found out that, like, when you're friends with someone, my psychiatrist who diagnosed me, she said that friendship isn't supposed to feel like you're pretending the whole time. It's not supposed to be this, like, game where someone says something and then you pull up all the possible responses and then choose the right one, and
It's what it feels like. Sometimes it feels like being an NPC, right? Like, honest to God. Yeah.
it felt that way to me. It felt like one of those video games where all the different options pop up and you pick one, except I also had to generate all the appropriate options. And I found out that it's not supposed to be that, and so then I've been, and that masking is bad. Masking is really bad for your mental health and your physical health, and so
The idea is if you don't have a very strong intuitive understanding of how you're supposed to engage in social situations, and you're aware of the fact that you have a history of not making the correct choice, you start to, what is masking? It's basically like, I mean, it's what it sounds like to an extent, like trying not to come off as autistic. But in practice, what it can often mean for people who are autistic is that, not artistic, autistic. It can mean that you, being socially competent turns into a little bit of a crapshoot, if that makes any sense. Like, you don't have a strong intuitive understanding of what you're supposed to do, so you have to put active effort and thought into it. And putting active effort and thought into how you're supposed to engage with and respond to people can make regular social interactions with friends feel more like,
I mean, it causes hypervigilance, which is incredibly destructive. The feeling of constantly, like, walking on eggshells, generating, like, I loved what she said about generating all the appropriate responses as well.
I don't know, I guess a little bit like a debate, where in a debate, you're not just like riffing. You don't just like intuitively engage in a debate. You have to think. You have to pause and think. What's the best thing I can say here? What lines of conversation do I want to pursue? What reactions will I prompt if I go down these different roads? And it turns like every interaction basically into like that level of, but debate is not like a friendship thing. Debate is like a cognitive exercise where you're trying to achieve a given outcome. It's not the same as just like regular interacting with a friend. You know what I mean? Wait, isn't that the normal way everyone thinks? Ooh, maybe we should. Maybe it's a good thing we're watching this video. We can get some realizations.
This is the danger when we don't talk to each other, when we don't open up to each other, and we don't realize that we're weird. And it's okay to be weird. Of course it is. It's just that if that highlights things that are unhealthy, that you struggle with, that's good. And no one ever, there were lots of things that no one ever expressed to me.
Rolling in chat. This is the year of the autist, though.
I was the smelly girl in middle school and high school, and I had no clue, no idea until I was halfway through college. You know, showering, for example, you know, water is a sticking point for me. Sensation, stimulus, like it's. I don't like the way water. I don't like being wet. I don't like the way water feels. And so I didn't like to shower. And since no one said anything to me I thought I was fine. I had no idea.
True, but it is good to know, and it's not good to mask. You know, it's better to be.
And it is the year of the autist. Absolutely. 100%.
Aware of. Well, I've always thought, like, no matter. I guess there are people who are, like, low-functioning autistic, and it's harder for them. But I think for most people who have trouble with it, you might not have the perfect, like, imagined, intuitive response to every social situation you think neurotypical people have, which they don't, by the way. Neurotypical people also flub in social situations all the time. But
it's true. They absolutely do. Everyone does. Everyone.
You know, I think it's possible to develop a better rapport with people around you than just like doing the like choice, the answer choice game where you're thinking of like, well, what would the best outcome be from these responses?
So I've been trying to do that less.
Will not be denied.
And I don't want to pretend. I don't want to people like me. It's really tiring. But like, I'm not just supposed to be alone.
This mourning process is so important. So important. You know, I used to think if you weren't part of a huge group, you know, group of friends, like that was what was weird about me, right? I couldn't please a whole group of people because I couldn't figure out a whole like group dynamics at all, not even a little bit. You know, and I've finally come to terms with the fact that I'm just going to have several very good relationships instead. But when your world comes crashing down like this, you know, and it just kind of hits you, that's a moment.
Is there no world in which I'm me and I have friends who also who like?
Yeah, Vosh, I have literally learned to socialize from playing Persona games. Wow. All right. Well, couldn't get that out of me with waterboarding. She just needs to watch Vosh. No, really though, yeah, it's very unfortunate. I'm sure things will get better for her. It does make sense though that if she developed friends that were, how do I put it? It kind of seemed like in her situation, with the masking stuff, with the making an active cognitive effort to maintain her interactions, it seems like, yeah, she might have had pity friends, right? So if she had friends who were like, yeah, this girl is weird, and then they sort of like stopped interacting.
I used to have those, I mean, that's what happened to me senior year when all my friends were like, pity friend is not enough. We can't stick around just because we pity you. Yeah, this is a very real experience that, like, I mean, I never talked to anybody about that. I had no idea that was a thing that I could or should talk about. I just thought I was broken.
Interacting with her, it seems like she, with a poor understanding of like the social rapport between friends, she had pity friends who, you know, maybe didn't actively despise her presence or whatever, but didn't, you know, she was kind of like a hanger-on a little bit. And after that, you know, now that she has a better understanding of what she's doing, maybe she can like have a difficult period where she, you know, where initially she has trouble finding friends, but she like develops a new friend circle that's more in line with what she actually behaves like. Totally possible. This is why us autists have to stick together. Yeah, it's okay. So I don't talk much about the.
My favorite people are fellow autists. Like, I intentionally seek out neurodivergent people now. You know, now that we've learned so much about these things, we can do this. You know, this is the advice that we need to offer young men. There is a place for you somewhere. You just have to find the place that you want, not the place that you're expected to want. I didn't care about being friends with groups. That's just what I thought I was supposed to do. There are people that will understand you and not judge you. They're out there. But if you're not giving them a chance, you will never find them and your life will never get better. Oh, and I didn't change my text, of course. Here we go. Masking is bad. All right,
The
here we go.
autism stuff outside of a kind of like jokey irreverence, because I genuinely don't think it affects my social abilities like that much, or at least not as much as it seems to affect some other people's. For example, I don't mask. I've never masked. I've never felt a need to. I've just been weird around people. I'm more of the like blunt and off-putting autistic than the other kind or whatever. So I've never done that. So all of the friends and social relations.
And that's why I say that most people who don't like Vosh are ableist. That's all it is. Like, that's the tone policing. We shouldn't tone police people. We cause them to mask. It's incredibly abusive to tone police people.
Relationships I've ever had or whatever, they were all in line with my authentic behavior. That comes with its own set of issues. But yeah, I'm an anti-masker, okay? I was at the protest and everything. A lot of masking is automatic learned behavior. Okay, so masking, if you're autistic, is like an effort to sort of feign neurotypical behavior. Masking is something that oftentimes autistic people learn as a defense mechanism because they are punished for behaving their normal way. They're punished for behaving in a fashion which is more in line with how they actually feel. Now, I'm lucky here because I had friends growing up and I've always had very supportive parents, which means that my weird behavior, for the most part, has been, I don't know if encourage is the right word. My parents have always been chill with me. So at no point growing up did I ever feel like I have to hide who I am and like develop a system for acting better around other people or else. I've never actually had that problem, myself. I know I can understand the drive to behave that way. I can understand that many people have been put in that position. I totally get that. I personally have not, But genuinely, it's not good, I think one of the things that actually is like really good about the internet is that it allows people who don't have the exaggerated swagger of a black teen to practice code switching, where if they have to mask.
Oh, that. Two things. That makes a lot of sense. Let me see. What did he just say? My bad on that.
Understand the drive to behave that way. I can understand that many people have been put in that position. I totally get that. I personally have not, But genuinely, it's not good, I think one of the things that actually is like really good about the internet is that it allows people who don't have the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
I think that's one of the reasons why Vosh is so lucky that he did have the internet to practice. All I had to practice on was the mean kids in the neighborhood and the mean kids at school. When I was a kid. God, I'm such a boomer now. Chat rooms. I remember I was like 12 in a chat room, and my mom caught someone asking me how old I was and asking me about my boyfriend or whatever. Obviously, this was back when AOL chat rooms were the wild, wild west, but yeah, I was never allowed in a chat room ever again. I didn't have a computer in my room, and it didn't even have internet, and I didn't have a computer in my room until almost 12. I wonder what it would have been like if I had had the internet to see more of the world back then.
To practice code switching.
The code switching. So That's something I'm trying to work on now, actually. Because I have a full-time job where I have to mask. I don't have a choice. I have to mask. People have to like me. I can't get away with anything else. And then I need to come here and I need to be able to rant and rave and express myself and have an opinion and decide everyone else needs to hear my opinion. You know, try to be funny. Yeah. Let's see what he says. I forget.
Where if they have to mask publicly, like or with their family or friends or whatever, or school or whatever, they can have people online who they can talk to and be more authentic and upfront. The issue is, and I think this is the issue that that girl had in the TikTok, is she didn't know she was masking, which means that she didn't realize that there was any way to behave other than that calculated engagement with what she thought the best outcome was, which is really bad because it means that she's not even aware of how she really acts outside of that. It indicates a lack of self-awareness, which is probably imposed by bad social situations.
I'll be right back
I'm
on
not
camera.
blaming her for that, but that lack of self-awareness can make it really difficult to understand what you're actually here for and what other people might be interested in about you. See, there's plenty of room in the world for weirdos, and I don't mean that derisively or whatever. The world's a big place, and there are lots of weird people, and there have always been lots of weird people. There are people in their 60s and 70s who grew up as model train set enthusiasts who spent their entire lives with a really specific hobby. There are people who are huge nerds about road work and traffic direction, and who will write
I think
letters
this
to city
is
council,
the issue.
Arguing.
The reason that the internet would have helped me so much would have been, Vash always talks about learn a lot about something and just talk about that. Lean into it. If you're super interested in something, be super knowledgeable about it, talk about it, and you'll be able to attract people like you. I think it's absolutely true. Of course, I think if I had been able, because I was a sponge, I always wanted to learn everything there was to learn. Still am. I just don't have the memory I used to, because boomer. Been over that, huh?
Against the putting a stop sign here because it would divert traffic. There are people who have spent their entire lives moving from book club to book club to book club because they just that's their jam, that's what they're about. There are plenty of weird people out there. That's fine. We need them. They're good. That's great. A lot of us, even people who consider themselves normal, are all very Patrick Bateman-y, weird and specific and hopefully not as harmful of ways. But you need to be aware of the ways in which you're weird and how to deal with it and how to present that in order for you to make a good life out of that, That lady on the TikTok, she could have plenty of friends.
Absolutely why we need to talk to each other, why we need to be more honest with each other, why we need to be more vulnerable. That's exactly why.
Just fine. There's nothing inherent preventing that from happening with her. But it requires a lot of self-awareness. Autistic people often are decently self-aware because the criticism of others forces introspection on them. But being self-aware isn't necessarily the...
Well, yes, but if there's trauma involved, then maybe not necessarily.
Same as being self-aware in a constructive or a forward-thinking way, So awareness is one thing, but once you're aware of how you are, how you feel, how you behave, what other people are interested in, what's being asked of you, how do you move forward with that? And, well, one of the things that I've always said, in awareness of the fact that 98% of you guys are autistic, is that, when interacting with other people, you should learn how to responsibly channel your enthusiasm for the things you actually do care about. Autistic people are worse than most when it comes to performative small talk. The idea of having to get through a barrier of social pleasantries to get at what they really want in a conversation, or because the etiquette when it comes to
This is so hard. So hard. I cannot remember to say hi, hello, how are you to people. My last job is yelling at me all the time. My manager. You still didn't say good morning. Oh my God. Small talk, pleasantries. These things are very intimidating. If we already, like, if we're there for a shared purpose, like work, why do I have to greet you? I understand being pleasant and nice, but it's hard. And obviously it's important. But it's one thing for me, at least. It's incredibly difficult.
How to handle small talk and when to move on to the next topic or whatever. This is actually really complicated stuff. I mean, neurotypical people f up all the time. Like, it's not, again, it's not like every neurotypical person is like this public speaking god or whatever. Most are quite bad at it, you know. So it's not like a hard line dividing autistic and non-autistic people, but there's definitely a trend in which groups are better at it than others. So that's one of the reasons why I've advocated that if you're, you know, a Vosh viewer, and you struggle with socializing with people, one of the best ways you can learn to engage on terms that'll make you and possibly them happy is to identify things that you're interested in and find interesting ways of conveying them. Because that's a good way of sharing your interests and finding people who care about the stuff you care about. And, you know, it gives you some leeway with learning how to engage in ways that don't involve this highly performative, like small talk, like charade, whatever, and stuff like that can help, you know, in my opinion. You know, either way, I'm rooting for it. Small talk is boring as that's my problem. This is an autistic thing, okay? But I understand small talk because I can do it. Small talk isn't about small talk. Small talk is about having a bunch of trite, irrelevant subjects to run through that allow you to get a read on the other person that you're talking to. Nobody who talks about the weather or how nice of a day it was, or the quick, like, oh, job, or what are you here for? They're not actually asking about those things. What they're doing is, they're like conversational hors d'oeuvres or whatever. They're little snacks that you engage in to begin with, to not only to...
And when you struggle to interpret those things, exactly, it's very difficult. This is also something I'm working on. I feel like this is great advice.
Rev you up for the real convo, but also because it gives you an idea of how they're engaging with you. You can read their tone, their mood, what they may or may not be interested in, sensitive subjects, if they're looking for anything from you, if they're looking to get away, anything like that. That's so dumb. No, actually, it's socially useful. It's very, very valuable. There's a reason why humans default towards it. If you don't have an interest in it, that's fine, but don't think it's because neurotypical people are less interesting than you, or because they're less smart than you, or because they're more tolerant of boring things than you. They're just engaging with something that you don't find interesting. But if you don't like it, that's fine. This is actually an interesting thing where it intersects with gender, since a lot of the things I masked when I was not transitioning were things people said were too girly, and also things that come from my autism. Well, there is a pretty strong trend between autism and being trans, particularly a...
It's very, very true. This is something else I was learning about lately. So, a lot of the not understanding how to interact with people, I mean, it's a lack of understanding the environment around you. Well, gender issues, and I don't mean issues as in, like, you know, being non-binary is an issue. I mean, like, if you're unsure of your gender and what it means to you and how you want to present, and you know, if you're still exploring, there's a heavy link between not understanding the environment around you and also not understanding your internal environment, which is where you figure out your gender. So this is super fascinating.
Trans girl, and I do think there's probably a reason for that. There is a overlap, certainly, I think, between some of the social tendencies developed by autistic and by trans people when it comes to, like you say, masking or like properly framing behavior, you know. Vosh, do you think it's possible for people who are willing to be your friends out of pity to become genuine friends who accept, love, and appreciate you despite whatever quirks you may have? I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to say no. I think that in a lot...
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's... Yeah.
a lot of ways, pity for someone around you is an almost irreplaceable and permanent feeling. That no matter what you may do or change your behavior around them, it is very unlikely that it will ever erase that feeling they have towards you. In fact, oftentimes they might feel kind of like annoyed that you're becoming less pitiable clashes with the pity they feel for you. For instance, you can see this in high school reunions. If a person was kind of pathetic in high school, but they come back and they're doing quite well, you know, the meme is like, oh, well, now everyone will love and respect you. But that's actually not true. Oftentimes, the pity that people felt towards you back then will cause them to feel weirder about you now that you've had a glow up, which is one of the reasons why it's really important to engage with people well in first impressions sometimes. It's not a one and done thing. It can be, you know, I'm not talking 100% of the time, but it's definitely, you know, it's definitely a thing. I still don't understand autism. That's okay. Autistic people don't either. So wait, small talk is just gauging someone's interest in talking? That's your take in it?
True. Not their interest in talking, right? It would just be kind of feeling you out to see if they like you. Because, I mean, that's how people decide. Most people, it seems like most people decide based on how they feel. Now, I don't necessarily, but that's intentional. So I can definitely understand why it could be important.
Because for me, most of my issue comes from that. For the most part, yes. Small talk is about gauging interest, establishing basic conversational rules, getting a feel for the person. Even if you're just doing, there's a million things you can read in small talk that have nothing to do with the small talk itself. And if you're autistic and you want proof of this, I would suggest you watch a movie. Watch any movie that has a heavy emphasis on character writing, and watch scenes where people engage in small talk and then the scene ends. And ask yourself, what was the purpose of that scene and what was learned between the characters? Was it only the content of the subjects of discussion, or was there something else going on there? 100% of the time, something else was going on there. There was always something else being read there. Somebody read from the other an emotion, or that they want to leave the conversation, or they're hiding something, or they're so on and so forth. You know, there's any specific recommendations? I legitimately think you could get this from almost any movie, like basically any movie. I think Tarantino movies are really good in that Tarantino movies, yeah. Tarantino movies are full of characters engaging in small talk where they don't say very much, but you get a ton off of it. Because Tarantino's really favorable towards like naturalistic dialogue, where people are doing serious shit, but they're being really like irreverent the whole way through. Oh yeah, Better Call Saul has a lot of that as well, that's true, yeah. Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad are both very character writing focused, so they would have a lot of that. Yeah. Lost show, if people have negative perceptions of you they found off-putting, that isn't something that can change. No, negative perceptions can change. Pity is a very difficult one to change. Very, very, very difficult, in my opinion. The Godfather movies, there's a lot of gauging how people respond to certain subjects, and it tells what they know. Yeah, stuff like that. Okay, does everyone feel appropriately autism-pilled? I hope you understand why I'm talking about this, by the way. It's good to go over. Any takes in this study that found neurotypical people are less willing to interact with autistic people based solely on their voice and appearance? I try not to do more over it because it's kind of depressing. Yeah, newsflash, people are going to be less likely to interact with you if you're unattractive, if you have a, if you're short of stature, if you're a guy. People have a lot of, like, you know, mean biases. We all do, including you. Neurotypical peers are less willing to interact with those with autism based on thin-sliced judgments. Individuals with ASD, including those who otherwise require less support, face severe difficulties in everyday social interactions. Research in this area is primarily focused on identifying the causes. Here are 3 studies. First impressions of individuals with ASD. Thin-sliced of real-world social behavior by typically developing observers are not only far less favorable across a range of trait judgments. It's difficult for me to make much of this without knowing specifically what was said or done. Yeah, so there's a lot here. I wouldn't worry too much about the broad stats. I would worry primarily with your own behavior. Boy, those are a lot of numbers. Thank God for the graph. So we have ASD individuals and TD, neurotypical. Speech content, audio visual, audio only, silent video, static frame, with favorability. And then ratings between the two, with autistic people rating far higher on being awkward, equal ratings between both on being smart and trustworthy, more or less. But apart from that, non-autistic people coming out, running out strong. They pathologize positive stuff about autism as well. Yes, that's true. But obviously, being autistic does mean that sometimes social interactions will be more difficult. But that's something that can be corrected. You know, it is always possible for people to learn new behaviors. Very important. I don't know, show them this video, K-An Astronomer, including this timestamp of me saying this right now in response to what you just said in chat.
No one needs to know that you're not getting f***ing laid at the water cooler. No one f***ing cares.
Oh, yeah, that's right. This one is the debate Lonerbox did recently regarding asexuality. I have not watched this one, so I'm not positive how much I'm gonna, like, you know, have to say, but we shall see.
and no one. She's a bulldozer. Holy shit! I have no regrets for amplifying Smugbug. I have none. He's the final solution to the Twitch poll problem. Right. I think what they're debating is rights for asexual people. I don't know.
Include the.
All right. Let's go.
Now, what I precisely mean by this complicated jargon of words is that wokeism.
An unavoidable end.
He's taking down wokeism.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, not too bad. Just rolling around Twitter getting angry at women, as usual.
Yes!
What does women do?
Is that a Baczynski painting? Yeah, it's called Untitled.
Well, this whammon doesn't understand what the fuck the point of an asexual advocate is.
Literally no one understands what the point of an asexual advocate is.
You laughed in the face of your last two.
Alright, it's pretty straightforward.
You
It's
do?
not-
Because
Oh, this is not. I think that I misunderstood which one this is. Alright. Maybe we have something fun. Alright. We can do the... Let's do a classically Abby.
So our faith talk for today is going to be around the Torah portion, which is called in English, He Lived. In Hebrew, it's Parshat Vayechi. This is the last Parsha of Bereshit, of Genesis. And I personally love Genesis. I love our forefathers. I love Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I love our foremothers. I love all of the stories because the characters and the people in the Bible are just so real. Nobody's perfect. They are all real human beings who make real mistakes, who deal with real tragedies and real struggles, just like we do. And they're there for us to learn lessons. They're not supposed to be people that we look up to and say like, well, they were perfect and I'll never reach that. We're supposed to look up to our ancestors, to the people who created our faith, who were there at the beginning and everything, to see how we can learn from them and grow. So in this Parsha, in this Torah portion, Jacob is dying, and he calls Joseph to him, and he has him bring Manasseh and Ephraim, Manasseh and Ephraim in Hebrew, and he gives them a blessing. But if you remember, he crosses his hands, or at least puts his right hand on the younger sibling and his left hand on the older sibling. So he gives the firstborn blessing to the younger sibling, which is a repeat of what happened with him, where Isaac gave the younger brother, Jacob, the firstborn blessing. And after that happens, he kind of gives the 12 tribes their stories of like what's going to happen to them and what they hold, what their futures hold. So following that, Jacob dies. He's brought to Israel to be buried, and to Canaan at the time. And the brothers come to Joseph and they say, please forgive us for what we did. Please don't hold it against us. If you remember, the brothers sold Joseph basically into slavery, and then he ended up rising the ranks in Egypt. And Joseph says, of course I'll forgive you. And then Joseph himself dies, and that's the end of the first book of the Torah. What's so interesting about the Torah and Genesis is the sibling rivalries, the marriages, the relationships with the children and between them. We see so much family strife, right? We've got Esau and Isaac. We've got Jacob and then his story with Rachel and Leah, right? That's the marriages that he has to deal with. And then Bilhah and Zilpah as well. They're handmaids. We have, Ishmael and Isaac. We have, or rather it's Esau and Jacob. Excuse me, from before. But what's so interesting about it is that so much of the story of the Torah shows family strife, and that it's simply built into the structure of the world. The way that these families...
I mean, it's true, but why? This is the shallowness of the conservative mindset, right? Is that just the way it is? Just because it's the way it is right now doesn't mean it's just the way it is. This is some real oh my gosh, The Good Place vibes, right? Happiness is just pain instead of happiness coexisting. The two are entwined.
Even from the very beginning are built to have these family struggles. Siblings are not getting along. Younger children get firstborn rights. Marriages are not going smoothly, and uncle relationships don't work out well either. There's quite a bit of struggle that's built into and baked into the Torah. And as people who are traditional and who look to marriage as such an important part of our lives, we might think when things are stressful between spouses, or when things are stressful within families, parent to child, that we're doing something wrong, or that we're failing, or that this isn't a godly way of approaching our families. But if you look to the Torah, you'll see that that's not the case. If you're struggling with that, it doesn't make you a worse Christian or a worse Jew. It just means you are going through the same things our forefathers did. And you also have to navigate it. It's good to know. Luckily, you have a blueprint for kind of how to do it or what not to do. The people in the Torah are just that. They're just people. They aren't any more than we are.
Okay. Let's talk about Brianna Joy Gray and Vosh. I thought this was really interesting.
Oh, you're defining two choices and then saying there's two choices. There is, in fact, a world where our job on the left, I believe.
That's
Force the Vote fans and Brianna Joy Gray fans are fucking subhuman pieces of shit who are despicable people who are only in it for the aesthetic and for the grift. Dipshit retards like Brianna here. There are very few people on the quote left who I have less respect for than Brianna Joy Gray. What a piece of shit. I do hate her. We're never gonna have her on this show. Brianna Joy Gray is a truly reprehensible person. They are spineless, grifting, weaselly, worthless little pieces. An idiot. I have no respect for Brianna Joy Gray. This is what we call a Joy Gray moment right here. No matter what she personally believes, she covers for fascists. She's representative of the rot in the online left, unworthy of the platforms that they stumbled into through the charity of people smarter than them. A genuinely unhinged person, she'll never have me on. You'll never have me on, will you, Brianna? You know that wouldn't go well for you.
I'm excited to be joined today on Bad Faith Podcast for the first time by prolific Twitch streamer turned YouTube streamer. Vosh, welcome to the program.
Hello, what a pleasure to be here. Hope you're doing well this fine morning.
I am doing well. Look, so the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time on Rising last week. You know, we were brought on, the producers reached out to you to come and talk about some of the discourse that's been going around about Andrew Tate and this crisis of masculinity that seems to have been an ongoing problem and trend for some years now. The rise of popular internet figures like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate as reflective of some deficit in society more broadly that is leading to both these YouTube figures and also a lot of kind of dangerous socially maladaptive behavior offline, I would say, and whether or not the left has met the moment in the same way that the right has in terms of offering an off-ramp to people who feel perhaps isolated, disillusioned by society, etc.
We'll likely come
And
back
what
later.
people
I wanna
noted
take a bit of a break.
after our interview was that there had been this
get some
history
food.
of you having had some substantive criticisms on
I'll
the
be
online, and